There are some Goosebumps books with good titles and good plots. You go to a bookstore and you saw a Goosebumps book on a shelf with the title and cover that you thought it was very interesting. Let's say Night of the Living Dummy, for example. You take a look at the book and thought, this looks interesting. So you buy the book, read it, and then later you'll be like, wow, this is the best book ever. The title is good and the plot is good. I can read this book over and over again. However, there are some Goosebumps books with disappointing titles, disappointing covers, and disappointing plots. Let's say the book Deep Trouble, for example. First, you saw the title and the cover, then you'll be like, wow, this looks cool. I think this is going to be the best book ever. I'm going to enjoy this one. But then, after you read the book, you'll be like, what? This doesn't make any sense. This never happens in the book. This story has nothing to do with the cover and the title. And that's why I'm making today's Goosebumps video. Today's video is going to be about the Goosebumps books with misleading titles. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Goosebumps books with titles that doesn't make any sense, mainly because they have nothing to do with the plot. I'll tell you what the books are about, and why the titles are misleading, and what the titles should be called. So, here are my top 5 Goosebumps books with misleading titles. Let's get started. Number 5. Return to Ghost Camp. So you probably thought this book is a sequel to Ghost Camp because of the title. Well, you'll be very disappointed when I tell you this, but it is actually not. In fact, this book is not a direct sequel to Ghost Camp. This book has nothing to do with Ghost Camp. Even the plot for this book is much different than Ghost Camp. Here are the examples. In Ghost Camp, a mysterious fog spread all over Camp Spirit Moon, and then all of a sudden, the kids cannot see themselves but their clothes and shoes. That's when the campers realize that they're ghosts. The fog turned the campers into ghosts. And here, in this book, an evil demon spirit called the Snatcher kidnapped the campers and kills them, and that's how they became ghosts. Which, I have to say, that's pretty dark for a Goosebumps book. Speaking of the campers, this book focuses on new characters instead of the same characters from Ghost Camp. And also, the camp in this book is not the same camp from Ghost Camp. In Ghost Camp, the camp was Camp Spirit Moon, and in this book, the camp was Camp Full Moon. So, you see, this book is not a sequel to Ghost Camp, and again, this book had nothing to do with Ghost Camp. I'm not sure why R.L. Stine called this book Return to Ghost Camp, but I'm guessing it's just a selling point. You know, since this book is another camp story, then I think this book should be called The Horror at Camp Full Moon. If this book focuses on the Snatcher, and it has the Snatcher on the cover, then I think, why not call this book The Snatcher? Or better yet, why not call this book Welcome to Camp Snatcher? Okay, that sounds stupid, but either way, this is a good camp story, but not a good title. I'm sorry, but it's true. This is not a good title. I think a different camp title for this book would have been better. Number 4. Frankenstein's Dog. I hate to say this, but I think Frankenstein's Dog is a dumb title for a Goosebumps book. I'm sorry, but it's true. It really is. Is this the best title that R.L. Stine can come up with? Because honestly, I don't think it is. Honestly, he could have just come up with the title that's something that's cool. And he could have just come up with the title that has to do with the story. And that leads to the next point. Now, despite the cover and the title, this book is not about Poochie. In fact, Poochie is not the main character of the story. The dog did appear in this book, but this book is not about him. In this book, a girl named Kat is going to visit her uncle. The name of the uncle is Victor Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein is a scientist and he makes robots. And that is actually what this book is about. This book is not about Poochie the dog. It's about robots. Robots. Freaking robots, man. Now, I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story, but since this book is about robots, then why not call this book Frankenstein's Robot? And for the idea for the cover, I think the cover should feature Victor with a creepy evil smile holding a robot next to him. Yeah, I think for a cover like that would have been cool. So yeah, I think the title for this book should be called Frankenstein's Robot, not Frankenstein's Dog. Number 3. Why I'm Afraid of Beasts. Alright, this title is a bit misleading, and that's because Gary Lotz, the main character of the story, never explains why he was afraid of beasts. In the beginning of the book, Gary said he was afraid of bees, and in the end of the book, he's not afraid of bees anymore. However, Gary never explains why he was afraid of bees throughout the whole book. There are a number of scenes in this book, including where Gary was beaten up by bullies, other scenes in this book where Gary and the bee were switching bodies together, and that was before Gary discovered he was a bee. Another scene in this book where Gary wants his body back, but the character Dirk refuses. Dirk don't want to give his body back to Gary, and this makes Gary angry, so he decided to teach Dirk a lesson. But those scenes has nothing to do with the title. They never explains why Gary was afraid of bees. Gary never explains why he was afraid of bees throughout the whole book, so what was the point for the title? Since this book is about Gary turns into a bee, then why not call this book Why I Become a Bee? Or Why I Turned Into a Bee? Or why not call this book Beware? Or something like that. And well, nothing else much to say. But again, this title is a bit misleading. So yeah, on to the next book. Number 2. Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. Now, despite the title, there are no scenes in the book where Hap and Chip, the lawn gnomes, getting revenge. In fact, getting revenge is not exactly what they're doing. They're not getting revenge on anyone or anything. In this story, the lawn gnomes are causing mischiefs. There is one scene in the book where Hap and Chip mention to the kids that they call themselves mischiefs gnomes. They told them that mischiefs is what they were doing. They're causing mischiefs for fun. So, yeah. The gnomes are not getting revenge. What did the gnomes get revenge for anyway? So, the gnomes are taken away from their home. They're being slaves, forcing to work as lawn ornaments, and that hurts their feelings. So they decided to get revenge because of that? Like, what? So yeah, this title is a lie. The gnomes are not getting revenge. I guess the reason R.L. Stine called this book Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes because, once again, probably just a selling point. I think this book would have been called Night of the Living Lawn Gnomes, because you know, the lawn gnomes comes to life at night. Or this book would have been called Mischiefs of the Lawn Gnomes, because you know, they're causing mischiefs for fun. Or maybe this book would have been called Attack of the Lawn Gnomes. There's one scene in the book where Hap, Chip, and the kids are going to the store's basement, where they discover that the basement has 600 lawn gnomes. And there's another scene in the book where the gnomes attacking the kids, or some other gnomes chanting. I don't know, it could be anything. Anything for a title like that. Once again, there's no revenge. No revenge in this book at all. Number 1. Return of the Mummy. So, yes, this book is a direct sequel to The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. The characters, Gabe, Sorry, and their Uncle Ben, returns in this book, and they're going to Egypt again for more adventures. However, there is one problem. The sequel did not feature the same mummies from The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. In fact, none of the mummies in that book returns in the sequel. This book features a different mummy named Prince Karoo. Prince Karoo has become one of the popular Goosebumps monsters in the Goosebumps franchise. What's even more misleading about this book is the tagline. The tagline says, "He's back from the dead." No he's not. He's not back from the dead. In fact, Prince Karoo never featured in the first Mummy book. This book is where we get to meet Prince Karoo for the first time. This book was his first appearance. So, yeah. Both the tagline and the title are lies. Since Gabe, Sorry, and Uncle Ben are returning to Egypt, then this book would have been called Return to Egypt. And since this book focuses on Prince Karoo, then why not call this book The Tale of Prince Karoo, or Meet Prince Karoo? Or better yet, why not call this book Don't Wake Prince Karoo? Cause you know, Prince Karoo doesn't like being woken up. He wants to rest in peace. But I guess Return of the Mummy is the only title that R.L. Stine can come up with. But I don't blame him. He's an author, and he can do whatever he likes. And that's about it. Alright, and that's it for this Goosebumps video. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you did, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.